Good day, everyone. I hope you're all well, and I hope that you've all managed to find a little bit of joy in your day today. My name is Mbali Chawalala, and today I am joined by Sibongile, Mbongo, and Keyuri Chibba, who are going to tell us about global markets at Citi Bank. So as we kick off our podcast, we would like to have Sibongile and Mbongo to please just introduce herself to us and tell us a bit about her role at Citi.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mbali, and thanks for having me on today. So just a brief introduction on who I am. As you know, I'm Sibongile Mbongo, and I work at Citi Bank, and I am in the equities department, which falls under global markets, and I am in equity sales. So I am in charge of the South African equity sales business, and I cover a diverse book of clients, long only and hedge funds, and these are mainly institutional accounts that we deal with. So I cover the South African aspect to that, as well as the export business. So this is where we use our offshore, how do I put this, our offshore expertise and our offshore presence, and we sell that to our South African counterparts over here. And with that said, I'll hand over to Keyuri, who will give you a brief on what she does as well.
Thank you. And thank you again for having us on this podcast. I'm Keyuri. I also work in the markets division. I work in foreign exchange. I look after a portfolio of corporate and financial institutional clients. At the same time, I also look after the EFX business for Sub-Saharan Africa. So you can think about it as I work in FX and I work in kind of two different products.
Thank you so much for that introduction. As we carry on with our podcast, we will have these two beautiful ladies to, telling us about global markets, the specific departments within global markets. So to kickstart, the first question we have, will you please explain what global market entails and its sub-departments and what your areas do?
Sure. So simplistically, you can think about global markets as a place that enables clients to buy and sell financial products, raise funding, and manage risk. Now, in global markets, you can think about it as being kind of split into four different departments. That's equities, fixed income, currency, and commodities. Those are kind of the four asset classes that we cover in markets. Then it is then further split into sales and trading. So for each of those kind of asset classes, you have sales and then you have trading. I fall under the sales division, and to explain to you maybe basically the difference between sales and trading. So I'm a salesperson. I look after corporates, and say one of my corporate clients was acquiring a business in Kenya. So South African business acquiring another business in Kenya. So with that, what they would need is they would have to go and buy Kenyan shillings, right? Because they are a South African business, their functional currency is ZAR. So they would need to go buy the Kenyan shillings. So they would come to me as a salesperson. I would then be the intermediary and sell them the currency. And by me selling them the Kenyan currency, I would have to go to my trader. He would make me a price. He would look at where the Kenyan shilling is trading against ZAR. Like today, it's about 741. So then he would make me a price. I would then pass it on to my client, and they would trade that way. Alternatively, that's a very basic kind of financial or FX transaction. It does get more complex where they can enter into different other kind of financial products. And with that, say, for example, they wanted to hedge the risk and enter into a forward, then I would go to the forwards trader, get a price for that forward, pass it on to them, and they can hedge that way.
Thank you so much for that beautiful insight into the global market departments. Keyuri, I would like to, if Sibongile has anything to add on to that question, you feel free to add. Just let me know.
Sure. So just briefly, I think Keyuri covered the big aspects of it, but to go into more detail with regards to the department that I fall under, as I mentioned earlier, that I am in equities. So that means I'm in that department, and in that department, we've got 3 different roles that we have, which are key roles. So we've got the sales aspect, which I'm part of, and then we have the sales trading, and then we have the trading. So pretty much, like, just to sum it up, is that sales is the one who goes out and we speak to like portfolio managers and we speak to analysts on the buy side, which are institutional clients, and we sell our research. We do various things as well as corporate access, and we're also in charge of any ECM deals that we need to show into our institutional accounts. And that obviously helps our clients to be able to come up with ideas of what it is that they should be trading. And on the back of that, the sales trader is the individual who then helps with regards to ensuring that we are able to capture that flow from our clients. And eventually the trader is the one who trades it. So the sales trader is pretty much the gatekeeper between the client and our trader. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. So that seems like very exciting things to do, with interval markets, which begs the question, what does like a general day in your days look like you two? What do your days look like, essentially?
So we have very early mornings. I mean, in my side, just to give you an idea, my day starts quite early. I normally, like when we used to go into the office quite frequently, I'd be at the office pretty much between 6:30 or so and 7. That was probably pushing it, but 6:30 would be the normal time. But then that's the time that you use. So we have a morning note that goes out to our clients every single morning. And in that morning note, that's where we have to figure out what happened in the US overnight, what's happening in Asia in the morning, and also determine how that affects the trade. So we need to ensure that we get the morning note out by about 7:30, because that's when we have our morning meeting. So that happens every single day. So the morning meeting happens every single day at 7:30, and then that's the South African one. And then that's where, we speak to the research analysts if they have any research out. If anyone from the other asset classes also have anything to add, they give us an idea of what's happening in the market and where they think the market will trade for the day. And post that, that's when we're able to pick up the phone, speak to clients, and get a feel of what they're thinking and give them an understanding of what our research analysts have said, maybe what our traders are thinking as well. And then after that, we've also got like a UK call that I also have to do, and then which is pretty much the same, but now we're speaking more on a broader part. So we're speaking more about global things on this UK call, and then we obviously have to send out these morning notes, and then if we've got any corporate access work that we need to do, or if there's any corporate actions that are happening in the market, we need to ensure we're on top of it for our clients, always trying to find new ideas to pitch to clients. So it's very important for us literally to be sitting at the desk for pretty much most of the day and getting used to understanding what's happening in the market and getting a feel of how that's going to affect the market and trade. So things like when the president is speaking, when the finance minister is speaking, all of these have an impact on what happens with the market. They could impact the rand, or they could impact certain stocks. Certain stocks also come out with their numbers, so with their results. So we need to also have an understanding and be able to act on the back of that as well. So I think a day of that's pretty much what my day comprises of, picking up the phone to clients, finding new things to chat to them about, and coming up with ideas on how to move the market in a sense, in a good way, obviously.
Okay, thank you for that. And Ms. Keyuri, can you please?
So my day is pretty similar to Sibongile. I start very early, so not as early as she does. I get to start at about 7:30. So I wake up, I do some physical exercise, do some meditation. I think anyone that works in markets knows that it can get quite stressful at times. And also it's very busy. So, that kind of space for some relaxation in the morning is key. I then also look at what's happening in the markets, what happened in the markets overnight. I work in FX, so I kind of just focus on what's happening in the FX markets. If dollar rand has weakened, besides dollar rand, looking at the other currencies, what's happened in those currencies. I then start getting phone calls. Clients are, wanting to purchase currency, they wanting to hedge. So no day is the same, but just giving you like a general kind of trend. So get calls from my clients. I call clients if I know they have kind of big exposures, looking at doing things in the future. Have some financial exposures or FX exposures. We may talk about different kind of trade ideas, hedging ideas. I will put together presentations. Deals don't often close immediately, so they take some internal work. They take work to explain to the client how it works. Make them comfortable with the kind of product they're getting into or trading. So internally, I may have to speak to credit. I may have to, if it's a new product, I may have to get the new product approved. And yeah, so that's basically my day. I'm just trying to see what else. Yeah, and I'm forgetting the most important part, like what keeps my my days very busy is client meetings. So always trying to identify a new opportunity, speaking to clients, getting to understand their business, and with that you kind of spot new opportunity. As mentioned earlier, I also look after the electronic FX business for Sub-Saharan Africa, and with that, also I'm speaking to clients, but in different countries in Africa. And essentially what we're doing there is we looking at kind of the whole FX workflow process and trying to automate it, whether it be with giving them our like dealing platform, or you could think about it as an FX dealing platform, setting them up on that, or automating so that they don't have to like manually execute deals. So putting like a holistic solution from beginning to end.
Oh, okay. Quite interesting. So from what I gather from both of you is that there's really like no set time. It's not like, because a lot of students imagine it's a 9-to-5 sort of job, and I hear you ladies saying you start at 7:30, 6, and it's just 9 to 5 is not a thing, essentially.
Yeah, there's no thing as a 9-to-5 if you work in markets. But when the markets close, though, I have to say that you don't really, you might have presentations to finish, but once the market closes, you can kind of switch off. You're working, focusing the whole day while the markets are open, and the markets open, at about 8 o'clock and at about 5. Actually, the market never closes, but essentially the South African markets I refer to.
Okay.
For instance, in equities, it's different where the trading actually starts at 9 a.m. because the stock exchange opens at 9 a.m. and then it closes at 5 p.m. But Keyuri is right in the sense that, once the market closes, in as much as you start early, that it's closed in a sense, post 5 on the
can go for a nice dinner, watch some series.
Okay, nice. So a question that we're all wondering, and every student's wondering, is how has COVID affected the trading world? So like your jobs and how you do your jobs, and the trading world in general. How has COVID affected that?
So I'll answer this from a perspective of how COVID has impacted the market, right? And I think that initially when we went into the lockdowns, so last year when we went into level 5 lockdown, there was a lot of panic and lots of flurry in the market, right? So we saw quite a lot of volatility at that time. And since then, we've also received a lot of companies that have been reporting and the like, right? But to be quite honest, some of the companies in South Africa, the good thing is that at the point that COVID hits, most of them, especially the domestic names, they were very much, they had healthy balance sheets, right? So companies did not really go under as much. There was obviously an impact. So what happened is that we obviously saw an impact on business confidence, right? Because South Africa had their own issues coupled with COVID, right? We saw unemployment numbers going higher. And then we also saw, as I mentioned, GDP coming under pressure, obviously because the economy wasn't fully active for the better part of last year, you know? And so I think the main impact from an economical point of view is that obviously our GDP was under pressure. I think for FY20, we saw GDP numbers at about 7% or so. So that obviously took a very big knock on the company, on the country's economic stance, you know, so the macro was very much under pressure over there. And as I mentioned, business confidence as well. And the fact that we had our own domestic issues. So we've got long-standing high unemployment rates. Politically, we not necessarily, it's been a tough road for SA politics, you know. And so I think COVID definitely had a negative impact on that. But I must say that, you know, our companies, in as much as, yes, they were under a little bit of pressure, not a little bit, they were under pressure, let me say, you know, it was not easy for a lot of people, but I do believe that they had very strong balance sheets, and that's what's helped them to get going. I know that banks had to hold off, well, a lot of companies actually held off on issuing dividends when their results came out, simply because a lot of them did not know what was going on or where this was going to lead to at some point. And so dividends were halted, but we've seen already now that the country has started to reopen, in as much as we've had second waves and third waves where we've had to stop doing certain things, companies are coming out with certain results. Dividends are back on, commodity prices have done relatively well. So that's actually what's benefiting South Africa at this point in time, is that our commodity prices are doing well. So that's obviously very much favorable for the country. So yes, business confidence is down. Unemployment is obviously still under pressure. But if you look at it from a trading perspective, there has been quite a little bit of volume that has gone through, simply because commodities have been what's been helping us and also keeping our market afloat in a sense.
Thank you for that, Sibongile. The next question that we have and we're all wondering is, what skill set does candidate needs to get into global markets? So what skill sets do students need and just people looking to get a place inside the global markets division?
Sure. First and foremost, I think they need to have intellectual and analytical skills. So a lot of what we do contains numbers. It's a lot of problem solving, trying to work out things using numbers, using thought. So I think definitely first thing would be intellectual and analytical skills. Then very important is communication and presentation skills. So, you're speaking to clients, you're speaking to government entities, you're speaking to, could at some point be speaking to, someone political, you're speaking to corporate clients, you're speaking to the financial director, the CEO. So, your communication has to be good. You're trying to explain to them ideas, trying to explain to them financial products, but quite complex products. So communication, presentation skills, really important. Then working in markets, especially when you're booking trades and having to be kind of at a few places at one time, like at this point in time, I'm speaking to you, but I'm also watching my screens because, I couldn't log off. So, if I wouldn't be booking a trade now, but essentially I could be booking 2 trades at one time. So, having that attention to detail, having that ability to focus. Then as well, you need to be a team player. You're always working with people. You're working with clients. Internally, you're working with your team. You're working with different stakeholders within the bank. I talk to on a day, I talk to, like, you could say 5 to 7 different departments within the bank. So, you have to be a team player. I think what else you would need is leadership skills. You may not be managing people directly, but essentially to get your product through or to get an idea through, you have to have that, ability to influence by indirect kind of management. So leadership skills have to be really good. That can be learned. You don't on day one walk into a bank and have all these skills, but they are developed. And yeah, networking is also really important. As I said earlier, you're talking to different people in the bank, networking outside the bank. So networking also really important. And then lastly, you may not think this is important, but I've seen how important it has become over the years, is creativity and innovation. You may think, we work in markets, we, work in finance, we're boring. We're not boring. We need to, think creatively. In my job, I'm always coming up with new ideas, new products. You're using the same basics that form a product, but then you're taking it and transforming it into something else, tailored to what the client's needs is. So creativity also really, really important as a skill. And then also, as I mentioned, innovation. At Citibank, we have, a few innovation labs, but essentially to keep on top of the market and competing with other banks that do similar things that we do, we need to be sure that we are always innovative, coming up with new products, not being left behind. The digital world is taking over. So, having the way we deal with our clients innovatively, could it be over chat, whatever the case may be, but we'd have to be innovative to succeed in this market. I know that was a lot, but yeah, I think that kind of sums it up.
Just to add on to that question, I just wanted to know, is there a specific degree background that you guys look at, or you accept people from all sorts of degree backgrounds?
Sure. In actual fact, we look at diverse backgrounds in the sense that we don't only employ people or students that have studied finance. In my time in markets, I've worked with people that used to be a doctor. This one person used to be a doctor, and they just realized they have a love and passion for finance. Enjoyed trading. Actually, they were a trader, and they started working in the dealing room. We also have a lot of engineers. These days, we have people who have studied computer science to assist us with, data analytics, helping us with our systems, coming up with new products, that kind of stuff. So, as what you've probably seen in the past, that banks have only looked at finance students, but over the term, or like how it is now, that's not the case.
I think
as in I also want to add, a student shouldn't be limited. Like, there could be someone that's studying to become a pilot, and they realize, I love finance, I have a passion for finance, I'm actually good at trading, I've been trading for myself, so let me just apply to a bank and see, maybe I can get a job. Sorry, Sibongile, you were saying something?
Yes, I think just to add to what Keyuri was saying, is that it's important that it doesn't matter which field you come from in terms of your studies, but just showing that you have that interest in finance or in what's happening in the market could help. And I think it also helps when we're not all accounting students or finance students, it brings around that diverse thought. So with Keyuri speaking about the innovation that you have to constantly have in being innovative and thinking outside of the box, it helps when we're not all thinking about things the same way. You bring a different element to the team if you've studied something different as well, because your thought process also differs. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So the next question that we have is, what sort of growth can a starting grad expect within the department of the market?
So the great thing about markets and equities as well in particular is that we all sit in the same dealing room, we sit next to each other, and so it's very much a flat structure, if I could say. You progress in the sense that your title changes, but the same work of knowing what's happening in the market, understanding how that impacts things, pretty much remains the same. Obviously, your responsibilities as you grow into management increase, right? However, that same level, the work that you're doing is pretty much the same. So you have exposure to the same markets, you have exposure to the same research, you're able to come up with the same ideas. So I think as a grad, if you get in there and what you want to do is trading, you'll only develop as a trader in a sense. I hope you get what I'm saying, in the sense that you just keep on making your skills better and better and better, but you and your boss are pretty much trading the same. If you're trading South African stocks, right? You're pretty much trading South African stocks, and that's what it is. So I think from an equities point of view, and generally in markets, it's a very flat structure in that the work that you do remains the same. However, it changes and it grows over time, but it's not that it's only changing and growing for you, it's changing and growing as the market evolves as well. So you develop as a person, however, you and your boss could still be doing the same kind of trading, if trading is what you're doing.
Oh, okay. Just as an add-on, so it's not like you start out as an analyst and go on to be VP and all those, sort of like levels within.
So you do have the levels, right? So you've got the levels where you become, you become an analyst, and then maybe an associate, and then you go on to be then director, and then you go to managing director. So yes, it obviously comes, but that's a function of Citi's structure, right? So with every bank, that obviously differs. So probably every 3 years or so, you develop in your if you've been doing well, if you've been showing initiative. Obviously with Citi, it doesn't just take the day-to-day work that you do. You need to be an all-round individual as well, right? So you can't just be sitting there staring at the screen and saying that, yeah, you're doing the bare minimum, and after 3 years, you think that management, and it's not just management in markets that has to acknowledge that you deserve a promotion, right? You need to be recognized throughout the bank. So in a sense, you need to be well-rounded. So join different committees like Keyuri and I, be part of different things, make sure that build your own personal franchise as well, because that's what will help you progress, right? Because it's very easy to become boxed into market, especially because with us, there's so many Chinese walls. So it's very difficult to interact work-wise with other people within the bank, right? So what's important for you to do as an individual, if you're in markets, is to step outside of that, figure out how you're going to be able to communicate to other people within the bank so that they know you, because it's easy to just become closed up in that place for 12 hours and then go home and not understand what's happening throughout the whole bank. So you also want to build your own personal franchise. And things that I can say you can do is joining different committees, putting your hand up for things that fall outside of your day-to-day role, things that are helpful towards the bank as a whole, things that speak to Citi's values, because that's the kind of person you want to become, right? And that's the kind of person that gets promoted. So having an understanding of that and making yourself stand out is what helps you also in getting your promotions. Because I think the first thing is that you got the job, right? It means we have faith in what you do, right? So we know that you can do the job, but how else do you stand out? So how your leadership values, how have you shown that? So Keyuri is the chair of the Emerging Leaders Advisory Forum, right? So she shows her other parts of her leadership skills through that. I'm the co-chair of the Employment Equity Forum. So I show my leadership skills through that, and that's how the rest of the firm can know who we are, despite us sitting in a very regulatory controlled environment.
So the next question that we have is how does Citi control security protocols? How does it prevent things like insider trading happening and all those things?
Very, very topical question. And it has become more topical over the years with, you see in the news, like this bank has gotten this fine for market manipulation or, whatever the case may be. Over the years, regulation and kind of compliance has become more stringent in markets. We have our own compliance department. This department monitors everything from market regulation to the bank, performing within the regulatory framework in the country. So we have that as a start. Then everything we do as a markets employee gets monitored and recorded. So our phone conversations are recorded, our chats are recorded, our client meetings, if we do it via Zoom, is recorded. And, like certain keywords may pop up in compliance, like saying things that you shouldn't say, like just as a heads up, that can be, pretty simple, but taken out of context, it can mean like you're tipping off someone else. So, you have to watch what you say. Then on top of that, in terms of like personal trading, we can trade personal shares, because remember, insider trading is that you get some kind of inside information about a company, and then you act on it. So, if you know that a company's share price is going to go up because that company, they did really well in terms of their financials, they acquiring a company, and with that, they look like a better company. So you go and buy that company. That you can't actually do that, because all our personal trades are monitored as well. So if I want to go buy a share, I first need to get approval within the bank. They have to approve it, and they would probably look at, why am I covering that client, that corporate client? Do I have any information? That's why I want to go buy the share. Similarly, in the FX markets, we can't actually trade FX on our own personal account if you're working in FX, because you are privy to a lot of information that the general public wouldn't have. Like with my corporate clients, I may know if they have something big in the pipeline, like they're acquiring a company, or they're going to be bought, or something that the public doesn't know. So I can, there's a big trade going to be going through the market. The trade is, you could say maybe, $500 million. And a size like that may move the market. So I know that because of that, the rand is going to strengthen. So I go take a position in dollar rand. I can't do that. I'm not supposed to do that because I have this information. So there is a lot of monitoring, and there is compliance on the back of that. And then also in terms of what we can do as employees in our personal capacity, that's monitored as well.
Thank you for that, Keyuri. I don't know if Sibongile has anything to add on to that.
No, I think Keyuri's answer was comprehensive. Thanks.
Okay. So the next one is a bit of a key question. It says that what effect, has terrorist activity had on global markets, and how does it affect trade?
So if you think about terrorist financing, essentially terrorists need funding, right, to finance whatever they're planning or terrorist activities. So they would need funds, and the funds would need to come from somewhere. So they're getting money from illegal activities, and then they kind of placing it into the market, layering it, which means, just kind of dispersing that money in the market so that you can't actually figure out where it came from initially. And then from there, taking it out of the market as clean and legal money. So, that's the way terrorists kind of launder money for terrorist activities. But as a bank and covering corporate clients, they may somehow be able to, if a corporate is doing these kind of shady deals, it's no longer, it's easy to pick up these days because we have, the KYC, the anti-money laundering policy. So essentially, as a bank, we need to know our clients, we need to understand all of their flows. So if they are placing money on deposit, where's the money coming from? If they're now using that money to buy currency, why are they buying currency for like belonging to a different market? Or what are they going to be doing in that market? And me as a salesperson, I enable these kind of transactions. I enable my corporate clients to buy dollars or to buy euros, whatever the case may be. If I suspect something not right, I have to raise it immediately. So, my client always buys $1 million. They come through every week, they buy $1 million. And now today they're coming through and they're buying $10 million. There could be something very legitimate behind that, but if it's something that's out of the norm, I would then go and ask questions. If I suspect something shady going on, I should raise it with my compliance department. But going back to your question on terrorist activities, it's really hard to do it these days in a very regulated financial market.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And with everything that's been happening in our country, specifically the riots that we've had in the recent months, we just wanted to know also how has that affected global markets and specifically Citi as a company? Has that affected you guys in any sort of way? And if it has, can you please just tell us how it has affected Citi?
Sure. So I'll tell you about what happened when the riots happened, right? So it was obviously happened on the weekend, and then Monday and Tuesday we're in the office and the market is trading. So what the initial thought would be that the market would be highly under pressure, but it was actually quite resilient. But that also just speaks to the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, when you were asking about the COVID impact, is that South African companies, first of all, they're looking attractive, right? From a valuation point of view, they're looking cheap relative to their own history. So they weren't really under pressure. The market still managed to close in the green, which means it closed positive on the day. So what these things mean when these things happen, obviously it doesn't bode well for the country as a whole, right? And if it doesn't bode well for the country, it doesn't bode well for the companies operating in this country. It takes business confidence down. If ever there were investors who were offshore investors looking to invest in South Africa, now they almost like hold back, they pull back and they think, is it really a safe place? Are we at risk again for more lootings, given that it was politically, it happened like it was a political thing? Investors start to think, should we really be investing in South Africa, right? So obviously, these are the questions that we have to answer for our clients. We need to speak to industry experts to get an understanding. We need to speak to political analysts who will give us also an understanding in order for us to relay these messages to our clients. So that's like the kind of impact. And obviously, politics play a big role in, I guess, what happens politically. As I mentioned, it does impact the market. It impacts the stocks. It impacts the rand and the currency as well. So obviously you start to probably see outflows from South Africa with people pulling their money out and thinking, you know what, why should I invest in an unstable South Africa? Let me go to another stable region, right? And that's how people would think in situations like this. So that's the kind of impact that we've had. And obviously from a macro perspective, GDP numbers. So any analyst who is now starting to see perhaps maybe 4% growth for the year, they've all had to revise their numbers, right? And that number has gone a little bit lower now because of the impact of the looting. And it's things that we won't see immediately, but it will have long-term consequences, right? So having the companies having to rebuild, yes, there's insurance that will cover the costs, etc. But obviously there's still that sentiment and individuals who've lost their jobs or who are out of work currently. And the fact that it happened in a pandemic, right, where we were already, like most people were already on their knees financially. So this doesn't help. So I think the fact that Citi operates in a country like this, it also just makes it slightly difficult for them. But I think it's better to understand the question from where it impacts the market as a whole. So as I mentioned, the market ended off in the green. It wasn't necessarily heavily impacted by the lootings, but obviously some of the retailers were impacted, and these are the things that we trade, for instance. So they've already come up with like trading updates and releases to let us know that the extent of the damage that has happened. So the market has been able to price these in, and we keep it moving. It's like almost like on to the next thing now, you know, like the market corrects itself and we just keep it moving basically.
Okay, so we have another interesting question coming in, and I think it's in sort of like everyone's mind, specifically students and people who are just trading in their personal capacity, right? You know, there's a lot of adverts about the foreign exchange being a place where it's advertised as though it's a get rich quickly scheme, and we just wanted to know, like, what are your thoughts on that? And sort of like for people looking to get into the to global markets, right? What sort of risks come with you know, being in markets? And so with students also just doing it in their personal capacity, how do they then link it to doing it then for companies such as Citi? Is there any sort of like thing that you have to say about that?
Sure. So I'll answer your question first about what is FX trading. And yes, you're right. I see it everywhere on social media, you know, people saying, follow me, I can make you money. You know, there's adverts almost everywhere. I can say it's really not as easy as it sounds to trade FX. Firstly, you know, currencies are really volatile. So yes, you can gain money or make a profit, but you can as easily make losses, especially if you don't have the training behind trading, in the sense that you know how to look at graphs, how to place your stop losses, your take profits. But maybe let me take it a step back and answer what exactly is FX trading. So FX trading is taking a position in the FX market, hoping to profit from movements in that FX currency. So for example, say dollar rand, right? Dollar rand today is trading at 14.75, but you think that something's happening in the market and you think that the rand's going to weaken and it's going to trade up to 15. So you then go buy dollar against the rand, hoping that when it goes to 15, you then sell dollars against the rand and make a profit. Now, with that, on the other side, with that, if the market doesn't go to 15 and it now trades to 14, like dollar rand is one of the most volatile currencies. So it could move, you know, up to 1 rand a day, even 1 rand 50. You know, last year with COVID, we saw it weakening, the rand weakening in the peaks of COVID, weakening all the way up to 19. Then within the same year last year, we saw it come back down. We closed the market at 14.64 at the end of the year. This year, you know, our high has been 15.50. We also traded all the way back down to 13.50. So you can see just the big movements in that. So in a nutshell, just to make it very basic, it's taking a position in currency. It doesn't have to be dollar rand. It can be any other currency that you want to take a position in. Wait for a movement and then profit from that. But as I said before, the market can go the other way, and you can also make big losses. I'm not saying that, you know, it can't be done, but you need to be very disciplined in the kind of take profits and stop losses and sticking to it, because maybe someone's making profits all the time, so they just don't put in any stop losses, and then the market tanks the other way and they leveraged into their position. So it takes a lot of discipline. It also takes, I think it's very stressful. I'm in the sales part of it. I'm not in trading, but I can see from the traders, they are not stressed, but they could be stressed if there's things going on in the market, and the markets, they don't know which way the market's going because it's just all over the place, because that can happen. So they need to be able to deal with stress. They need to be disciplined. And the way trading fits into like a bank, and in terms of global markets and how they can trade in a bank, and it could be FX, it could be equities, like with shares, you take a position in a share, you think it's going to go up, and then you profit. It could go the other way and you make a loss. But essentially how it fits into the bank is, as I explained earlier, so the traders here manage FX on a big scale. So they manage the position of the bank. So in like a South African trader, FX trader, they assisting us sales in making prices to our clients. As with my example earlier, my corporate client was acquiring a business in Kenya. They needed to buy Kenyan shillings. So I went to my trader. He gave me the price. But the minute he gives me a price and I deal with my client, the market can move the other way. So the trader needs to know how to manage risk. For example, they can keep that position on their book, hoping that the market can move in their favor. So they put a take profit in there, but they also need to put a stop loss. And I think my explanation makes it sound very easy. And in the past, I've traded when I was a grad, and I did some rotations on a trading desk. And they give you paper money, and you trade with the paper money, and life's good, you're making money. But once you start putting big amounts to that, it's really not as easy as it sounds. But I also want to say that we have hired in students or people that have traded in their personal capacity and shown how they've managed the risk, how they've made profits, how they've dealt with the losses, and how they learned from it. So if a student is wanting to get into FX trading in a bank, they can send their portfolio through. The traders could have a look at it, and then once they come into a bank, they can build on kind of the skills that they've acquired by themselves. Having traders in the market that have been in the market for 20 years, training you on graphs, different trends, different patterns, how to spot movements, really, really can help them hone their skills. And it's also, what a bank is looking for. They are looking for traders. And often it starts as a student, just having a slight interest in the markets and trading for themselves.
Sibongile, do you have anything to add on to that, or can we move on?
We can move on.
So I also, this is also one of the questions that another student of ours asked. Did you guys always know that you want to be, in global markets? So like as a student in your student days as well, is it something that you always knew that you wanted to do?
Well, not necessarily. On my part, I studied economics, right? And econometrics, so that I would be just focusing on the economics part of things of the world, right? Which is still markets, but more on the research side. But I think when I found myself on my grad program and I was in the equities dealing room, I got to enjoy that part more. Not to say that I have not taken my economics background into my current role, because I find that it fascinates me even more when things like, when macro things happen, I get quite excited because I can quickly relate to that and give an answer to that, right? But I do feel that I'll answer honestly, it wasn't necessarily the first pick, but when I found myself in it, I found it to be quite interesting, and I really found that I fit in quite well, and therefore that's why I carried on with it. So I think, Keyuri, what was your experience?
A little bit different to yours. I actually was in my last year of studying, and when you're studying, you actually have no idea. You know that you like finance, but you don't really understand a bank and how a bank works and the different departments and what everyone does in different departments. And that's why I think this podcast is great, because now students can listen to Sibongile and I talking about markets and kind of getting an idea of what happens in markets. But back in the day, about 11 years ago, when there were no podcasts, there was internships, and I did one. And there's still internships today, so that hasn't changed. But I got accepted onto an internship at one of the local banks. But the internship was in global markets. And so I'm from Cape Town. I live in Cape Town. I studied at UCT. And they flew me up for 2 weeks, and they basically placed us in global markets. And the minute my foot stepped into the dealing room, I was sold. Just the hustle and the bustle and the noise, it just seemed like so much excitement. And if you walk into like maybe a different department in the bank, like credit, it is silent, So I really think at that point, I just knew that global markets was for me. And then I only applied to like the global market divisions at different banks. I ended up getting a job in global markets at one of the local banks in South Africa, at Nedbank. And I started on the grad program. I rotated from sales to trading. But I still feel, I wouldn't be as mentally and intellectually stimulated in a different department in the bank as I am in markets. And, that may differ for someone else. It's different personalities. For me, I'm always working on a deal, lots of excitement when I close a deal. And, I get that kind of fulfillment from my job. So I think I didn't know, but I did know very quickly once I did that internship.
Okay, thank you for that, because I think that question was asked because from the outside looking in, it's very easy to look at you guys as if like you are those people who've always just had it together, and because you have so much experience right on the field, and the things that you're saying speak to so much experience that you have. So I think it's great for students to also know that, what were you guys like while you were still students. So we also have the question of what do you guys enjoy most about Citi, about your job at Citi?
So I think what I enjoy the most about Citi is the fact that, it has such an open door policy, and they actually mean it. So you have access to senior management, like really senior management, and I think that's quite important. The fact that you can speak to these decision makers within the bank and get their views on certain things. It's very, very interesting. And the nicer thing is that, you're working for, it's an American bank, so you're working for a global institution, and you're not just limited to your colleagues in South Africa. You have exposure to so many individuals from many different backgrounds, right? And different countries as well. And you're able to put everything together in the sense that you have an understanding of, you could be talking to someone in Brazil today, someone in India the next day, someone in the US, someone in the UK, and even in Turkey. And there's so many things that happen in these various countries and these different regions as well. And the nice thing about Citi is the fact that you can easily just connect and communicate with these people. And what I've found is also that employees at Citi are very helpful, right? So if you're looking to do something different, all you have to do is literally email someone, put your hand up, and you'll find the kind of help that you're looking for, right? So it's very open in that sense. And the opportunities that also present themselves within the bank are quite great, right? And you're able to make such a big impact in the market that you work in, simply by leveraging off different kind of resources that Citi provides for its employees. So I think that's the great thing. And I think that also helps you to expand your mind, right? Like you don't just think narrow, or you don't have this like solo mentality where you thinking on your own or whatever. There's like lots of, you can bounce ideas off different team members and get an understanding of, okay, I remember maybe this same situation happened in Brazil. How was the impact in Brazil ultimately? And then you can maybe make some references towards South Africa if the same kind of situation is happening. So I think that's the one thing I like, that it opens up your mind to greater things. And you're speaking to sometimes international clients as well, who think differently to you as a South African, you know, so that's an amazing thing in my opinion. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
I totally agree. So the multicultural aspect is great. So half of my team actually sit in London, and they from all over the place, from Bulgaria, some from the US. So essentially, you know, like when you're working on something, you have this diverse amount of thought, people that think differently to you and make you think differently. Then everything that Sibongile said, I totally agree. And that's what I like about Citi as well. I think maybe just one more thing to add is that, you know, for women working at Citi, it's great. We have the first woman CEO, Jane Fraser, the first woman CEO at any bank globally. So, you know, that's a first. There's a big focus on women empowerment. For the past few years, they've been closing the gender pay gap. So, you know, women are now taking up their rightful space in the corporate world. And I really think that's great.
Okay, thank you for that. You know, that also just broadens our imagination into trying to think of what it's like to work at Citi, the personality of the organization. So I think you guys did a really great job in explaining that. Another question that we have is, do you guys have any CV tips that you can offer us as students? You know, how to make our CVs look great to get into global markets?
Sure, I think for any role that you're applying for, first of all, it's important to tailor your CV to what the role requires, right? So just because, I mean, if you studied engineering and that's what you're telling us, okay, that's great, but how are you going to add value to the team? So ensuring that you're able to highlight the different kinds of achievements that you've done is important, which should also pretty much be in line with the kind of individual that we're looking for. So if you want, I don't know what engineers do at engineering while they study, right? But like if you want something in engineering, highlight that. So you led the team to that, but like highlight that so we can see, okay, you have leadership skills. You're able to think outside the box. Okay, you took a risk on a certain, like I said, I don't know what engineers do, but like you took a risk on a certain project that you had, right? And that all shows that, okay, you're a risk taker. So that helps if especially you're not just from a finance background, right? Which is probably much easier. But I think overall you want to keep your CV brief, because you can only imagine that traders and people who work in the dealing room, to be very honest with you, concentration span is very, very limited. Like Keyuri right now, she's looking at the market, she's looking at FX, she's looking at what's happening while she's still talking to us, right? And I'm doing the same, trying to like check any news flow that's coming out or whatever the case is. So I can't sit there and be reading, or any recruiter can't be or any person in finance or on the desk rather, can't be sitting there reading a CV that's 3 pages long. So you want to really keep it brief and concise and highlight your key points and make sure that the experience that you have is relevant for the role. So you want to make sure that you understand the role that you're applying for and showcase how you are able to add value to that role. I think that's important. And I think another key thing that I've seen a lot of grads not do is they leave out the cover letter. A cover letter is somewhere, it doesn't even have to be long, just 3 paragraphs is fine, right? But that's where you can literally highlight your achievements, right? This is your time to shine, right? And highlight how the fact that you came number 1 in this competition and how you feel that having done that adds to the kind of person that you are, or to your leadership skills, or to your sales abilities, right? Is important, because then we also have an understanding of the fact that you know the kind of role that you're trying to get in, and this is how you've worked towards getting into such a role. So I think that's important. So keeping your CV brief, making sure that it's relevant for the role that you're applying for, as well as having that cover letter is quite important. Obviously, leaving details of where people should contact you as well. So yeah.
So another question is, so with things like trading in personal capacity, whether it's buying coins or trading in foreign exchange, is that something that you should be adding onto your CV to say, hey?
Absolutely. I think it's also questions that will come up in an interview, right? So for instance, if you're doing anything in equities, we'll find out, so have you traded in anything in any stocks in the market? We'll want to get an understanding of that. So you want to be able to have done this. It benefits you, right? If you can show that, and if you can show that you've done it before in your personal capacity, not having taken the biggest of risk, but it gives us an understanding of how you think, right? And how you view a company. We obviously, if you're coming on as a grad, we're also here to teach you how to view a company, or how to view certain instances that happen in the market, or news flow that happens in the market. And so just having shown that you've participated in market activity is quite important. And it's even better when you're coming from an engineer background or a non-finance background, or maybe you've studied languages or literature. It's important to show that you have that finance interest, right? And the way you can do that is by trading, even if it's just small money in the market and in stocks, in, I guess, coins, like you say, or in FX, or whatever the case is, just to show that, yes, you've been exposed to this, despite you having studied something that's very off what the norm is, but you've got you've given yourself this exposure. I think that's what will help you.
Okay, thank you so much for that advice. I think so. We've reached the end of our podcast, and the last question that we have is, like, what advice would you guys give to people who are now students, still in school, and just on how they can prepare themselves to perhaps join the global markets team one day?
So I think, first of all, you need to decide if this is what you want, right? Because it takes a lot of hard work. I'm sure if you've listened to the podcast from the beginning till now, you'll understand that it's not just as simple as what people make it seem to be. It takes a lot of hard work. You need to determine what your passions are in life, right? Because it takes long hours, right? So in as much as when the market closes, you're done, but in that period while you are working, and you're there from the time the market opens until it closes, you really need to be committed, right? You need to be sharp and alert always, and have that element of risk taking. Not everything will always go your way, so you have to be you have thick skin, which is just the honest truth. You have to have very thick skin, because when things don't go your way, you need to be able to quickly react and get a solution very fast. There's no time to sit back and be like, oh my gosh. So yes, it's daunting, but you can't sit and wallow in those emotions for too long. You have to keep it moving. And so that obviously takes a certain personality trait. So you need to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into, and whether or not you feel that this is what you can do for X amount of years, right? And whether or not you have the commitment to it. So I think that's the kind of advice that I would give. Understand what you're getting yourself into, and determine whether or not you're willing to put in the hours, because it's not like any other job where you can even step off the desk to go take an hour lunch break, right? Normally you're on your desk having your lunch on your desk. Yes, there's work-life balance. It does exist. Like I said, after 5, you're done. But when the market is open, you really need to be committed and focused and alert. So determine if this is your passion, because once it becomes your passion, everything that I've mentioned now does not seem like a burden. It just seems like a way of life, or you're growing and you're evolving and you're getting to know so much about things. And the nice thing about this is that you have that first-hand experience with regards to whatever happens in the country. You're sitting in the front seat seeing what actually happens, right? Unlike any other person, if rates go higher, right, or if rates are increased or decreased or whatever the case is, they'll only feel the after effects after a while. But you get to see what happens. You get to work with people who are forecasting where rates are going, right, and how that's going to impact currency, how that's going to impact stocks and the like. So it becomes fun as well, and you don't see it as like, oh my gosh, I have to be up, I have this morning meeting at 7:30 every day. Oh my gosh, like you don't even see it like that, right? So you need to determine whether or not this is your passion, because once it is, you don't find it to be tiring or daunting, or yes, it's stressful, which is normal, but you don't get sick of it too quick.
So I'll just talk personally what really helped me. As I mentioned in this podcast, I did an internship, and that opened up my eyes to the banking world and global markets. So I would really encourage students to do their research, to find out things about different departments of the bank, which department they want to go to, what kind of skills do you need for that department, and maybe reach out to people on LinkedIn, look at LinkedIn profiles. There's a wealth of knowledge on Google these days. You can actually search like different roles. So really, do your homework, because once you get into the working world, it's the rest of your life, it's your future. And yes, you can change. Like I've changed probably 3 times within my role within markets. And you can do that, right? But you kind of want to get into the right place initially and then build from there. And also have the guts to reach out to people. You'd be surprised, they actually do message back. If you have a question, and if you had to reach out to me on LinkedIn, ask me a question, I would definitely reply. Like, I can't promise you a job, right? I can maybe talk about different opportunities we have in the bank, but reach out, do your homework, and be curious. This is the rest of your life. It is your future.
Okay, so thank you for that. We have just now reached the end of our podcast. And as a School of Economics and Finance admins, we'd just like to say thank you to you two. The value that you just now added by just being here and giving us this interview is very great. And I'm sure the students will appreciate it a great deal.